Hey guys, so this is AP World History, Chapter 5, Parts 3 and 4 today. And today we're going to look at the first part, early Chinese writing and cultural development. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is oracle bones and early Chinese writing. Oracle bones, this is pretty much the earliest form of writing that the Chinese had. And was the principal instrument used by ancient Chinese. And so what it was they would get these bones usually from large animals like a sheep or a turtle even, and they would begin to inscribe like little not cracks in it, but little words on it. And then what they would do was they would put this bone to heat, and the cracks would form. And the people who began to use this first were the fortune tellers. And what would happen is that they would interpret what the cracks meant. So the most common was from the Royal Archives, these oracle bones, and it posed like daily questions, like was the queen gonna have a male or a female heir? Should they produce more agriculture? Those kinds of things. Should they go to war? So that's really the earliest form of writing. Here's another example of the oracle bones. Later on, the oracle bones will turn into pictographs. They'll use pictographs for their language, and these pictographs will turn into ideographs. So the idea that maybe two pictures will represent one idea. So discussion question 10, why do you think oracle bones were so important to the royals of the Chinese society? So in addition to this writing, after it got developed, you had literature that develops in China, especially during the Zhao. You had things called the books. You saw the Book of Changes, the Book of History, the Book of Etiquette, and so on. So the Book of Changes was pretty much just an instruction manual on how to tell the future. The Book of History was a book that justified the Zhao state and why they came into power. It justified them being into power and pretty much called for the people below them to obey their dynasty, their rule. And then the Book of Etiquette, which is also known as Book of Rights, this was just about how you're supposed to behave, polite behavior among ruling elites, among commoners. So these were popular books. One of the other popular books that you see is called the Book of Songs, and it was also known as Book of Poetry or the Book of Odes. And pretty much this just talked about life, life, love, family, friendship, reflecting on who you are with human affairs. And there was no concern for politics or social conditions. It was just kind of a reflection. So what ends up happening is that when the Zhao dynasty ends, the books will fall victim to human enemies. And what that means is that the Qin dynasty will come in and they'll pretty much destroy any books that do not have utilitarian value, meaning if they can't help to maintain order, then they need to be gotten rid of. And the reason for this was because Qin did not want anything to exist that might go against their rule, or it might inspire doubts about their rule. So a lot of it was destroyed. So question 11, what can you infer about the creation of the books in the Zhao dynasty? Meaning, why were they created? Why was it so important to create a book of songs, a book of history, a book of etiquette? Okay, so the last part we're going to look at is Chinese cultivators and nomadic people of Central Asia. And it starts with the steppe nomads. And these are pastoral societies, okay, which means that they are moving from place to place, feeding their herd. And they're located north and west of China. So if you look at the map, these are the steppes. So this is the area they're located. And again, these steppes are not really suitable for settlement, but they're really good for feeding their animals. So these nomadic societies of Central Asia help to link agricultural societies to the east and the west. So what ends up happening here is that these nomadic societies, they really can't exchange, anything, any food or crops, but what they do have are animals and horses, and they begin to exchange those goods for the foods and the crops that these dynasties have. And even though you think this exchange is good, between the two, and so that would make relationships good. It's actually kind of a tense relationship between these nomads and the already settled Chinese societies that are there. The southern expansion of Chinese society, looking at the Yangtze Valley. So it's important to know that China will influence their spread to the north, south, and west through the migration of assimilation. So Chinese people will spread around the Asian area, and this will support more intensive agriculture, especially in the Yellow River area, also known as the Long River. The state of Chu. So, agricultural surpluses and growing populations led to the emergence of cities and states and complex societies. So, the state of Chu will develop, and it's right here, the state of Chu, and it will pretty much take on all those Chinese cultural traditions, social traditions, political traditions. Okay. And they felt that they were autonomous from the Zhao, meaning that they're their own state and they really have nothing to do with the Zhao, even though they adopted everything from them, pretty much. But that was the state of Chu that begins to develop. So, last question: why did the state of Chu become a powerful dynasty like the Jia, Shang, and Zhao? All right, so your big takeaways here are, of course, the use of oracle bones as the earliest form of writing, those books of songs, etiquette, history, why they were developed, and then the relationship that the Chinese had with the nomadic people. Although it was tense, they actually did provide usefulness for each other. They were able to exchange, items that each took a value from each other. And then, of course, the state of Chu, totally autonomous from the Zhao, and yet pretty much replicated the Chinese traditions that existed in the Zhao dynasty.